Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of The Suspension Bridge by Anna Dowdall. This is a book from Radiant Press. It came out in October. It's a Canadian kind of literary fiction mystery. I received this book from River Street Writing in exchange for a fair review. The cover is so pretty. Isn't it like a beautiful cover? I requested this book, I will admit, because I was curious about the bridge and whether a train went over it. My obsession with trains is never going to end. We were at trivia the other day, and one of the questions about this movie from 2011, it was 2000s trivia, a movie from 2011 called Source Code. I've never seen it, but it was like, what's the movie where a train crash keeps repeating? And I was like, guys, the movie is obviously called Off the Rails. No one agreed with me. I was clearly wrong, but anyway. What am I talking about? So, an interesting mystery period piece literary fiction. The Suspension Bridge is a good little mystery, but the focus is on the complex main character. What is it about? A literary whodunit set in an unreliable 1962, The Suspension Bridge takes place in a Canadian river city dreaming of fame as it sets about building the world's biggest bridge. The newly arrived Sister Harriet navigates a chaotic first year at upscale St. Reginald's Academy, where the mysterious disappearance of boarding students complicates her ongoing identity crisis. The sinister bridge is meant to usher in a new era for Bothanville, pronounced Buttonville, but the inner lives of several characters, including Harriet's, fall victim to its supernatural influence. Part comic allegory and part fairy tale, The Suspension Bridge takes the reader with dark humor and occasional sympathy into a mid-air world of bridges of many sorts that don't always hold up as well as they promise. Normally I don't read the little blurby thing at the end, but I thought that one was just pretty fun. Yet, maybe I missed something, but I wasn't sure where the allegory or fairy tale aspect came in that's mentioned in there. But perhaps it's because it's set in 1962, but it's actually not set in a real place and it doesn't feature real events. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Anyway, what surprised me about this book was that I was so engaged with a book about a nun. I'm like the opposite of religious, but I was curious about this book, so I decided to give it a shot. What I really liked was that Harriet is not some holier-than-thou person always spouting off. She's questioning herself and her place in the school, and I guess in the nunnery, the nun life, the religious order. I don't know. Clearly, I know nothing. And she has crushes on dudes, and she even sneaks out in plain clothes to go to bars. The story is not a religious one at all in terms of having some sort of theological theme or plot that reinforces religious dogma. Then again, if that was the case, it went over my head because I know literally nothing about those topics, which is fine. That's how I like to live my life. But the story just so happens to feature a character who is a nun. It really shows something I always suspected, that not everyone who joins the church in that way is really that religious, or at least not that fervent, or never has thoughts about leaving. This absolutely fascinates me, though it could be probably due to a childhood influence of The Sound of Music, which was played a lot in my house. And I mean, who wouldn't leave the church for Captain Von Trapp? So that was one of the many draws for the story for me. I was curious about that aspect. The novel really does have a sort of literary fiction flair to it, as the mystery is used as a way for Harriet to learn about herself more than it is to really solve a mystery. She's not an amateur sleuth by any means. The mystery sort of resolves itself around her more than her actively figuring it out. The way these two strands intertwine was well done, given they are somewhat disparate. Rather than like two railroad tracks that need one another to work, or two plots that twisted together, it's like the mystery of this plot is like the line, and Harriet's story is like a sine wave. Like they meet at certain points, but they aren't entangled. How they did meet, though, and work together was well done, especially given they aren't super connected. So the fact that these two things kind of tied well together, I thought was really, really well done, because from the outset, you could have totally taken out the mystery, I think, and had Harriet's story. And the mystery could have existed potentially, I'm trying to remember the intricacies of the plot here, without Harriet involved at all. But the fact that they did kind of flow together was really well done. The other characters also make the story very compelling. There are two men Harriet is friends with, both of whom seem to like her more than a colleague / friend. And one student in particular who is very interesting in that she's of a very low social economic demographic, and that kind of part was more interesting to me, really. They all serve as foils for Harriet to learn about herself and who she is and what she wants in life. They also serve as glimpses into society in the early 60s, something I'm not super up on, so I found that part really interesting too. Now, the book is quite slow. I actually enjoyed the languid pace, but I would never call this a thriller or even really a mystery. You know, a lot of it Expect a lot of deep dives into characters and less into plot and intrigue. It also isn't historical fiction, it's more of a period piece. We get clothes, text, some references to labor riots, but the setting doesn't feel particularly resonant. It could have been set in the 40s or 80s even, really, as the story didn't seem dependent on the setting. I think the only thing it didn't need was, like, the internet. The end result of the mystery fell a little flat for me and wasn't super believable. 1, sure, but 3, like, really? That's all I'll say. Likewise, the prologue is a scene from later in the book, which I found a bit spoilery. I wasn't sure why it was done that way because it didn't seem to, like, add anything. It's an interesting way to start the story for sure because it's probably the most action you get in the whole book, but it wasn't really my kind of cup of tea to have, like, the scene repeated. But that's just a preference on my part. Overall, though, I really, really enjoyed this. It's a great winter weather book. It's something to read when you want something a little ponderous and well written, but isn't completely a literary fiction. Something that's not going to, like, disturb you, but isn't, like, boring. I really liked it. I thought it was really, really good. And thank you so much to River Seat Writing for sending me this beautiful copy. It's lovely. It's going to go on my shelf. And the spine's going to stick out very nicely, too. Actually, it won't go on this shelf. It's my sci-fi shelf. It's going to go over there. The shelf no one ever sees. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and catch you later.